Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Day 2 of CDL Major 5 in Toronto is done and dusted, and already the pre-tournament favourite odds-on team to win the entire thing are out of the tourney, and not just in a close-fought fashion. This was a demolition job over both series they played this weekend, what went on for OpTic, but also Vegas Legion keeping their dreams of World Championship qualification alive. They definitely still have the destiny of their team in their own hands. Very much intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, man. What a crazy day. Some rapid fire series as well, honestly, out of nowhere. And I was hearing that London were actually playing pretty well behind the scenes, and finally they seem to come good in this series against Boston. I will say, given all the storylines of Boston over the last few days, many people are going to say it's karma, right? I mean, the way they lost to Rokkr, maybe that's karma. The way they lost here to London was, frankly, on their part, embarrassing. Now, yes, they did solidify their spot at the World Championship, but, I mean, I don't know what Boston are going to have to do going forwards, because they're coming against London. Asim gets a ridiculous 4-piece here. It was a great story for Asim, actually, just because, you know, he's Canadian in his home country. I really wanted to see him get the victory, and they came out swinging here. They got the job done in the search and destroy. They made some highly questionable London plays in the control, where they arguably maybe could have won 1 or 2 more of those rounds, but eventually they get the job done in Game 4, and that's Boston losing a load of respawns, 2 hard points in the series. Kremp had a really rough one, and we'll talk in a second about the whole PC1 thing, and we'll come back to that because that was clearly debunked, I think, in the 3rd series of the day. But an awesome performance here from Ravens. Finally, right, they win their first LAN series all year. I think the last time Scraps had won a LAN series, we're talking 2020, because he wasn't in the league for some time and then it went online. So it's been like 3 years since Scraps won a LAN series, and finally he did it. And I mean, yeah, June 2nd last year was the last time they won a LAN win. So remarkable story, but they finally got it, and it was great for Asim to get his moment in front of the crowd here. So yeah, Boston exposed, no? I mean, Sound EQ Merchants, there was all this talk, would they get exposed, would they not? And Awakening says, look, we're terrible. And this is now the question that Boston have. They go into the World Championship, they have qualified, that is official. Their team isn't working particularly well. Can this team of 4 win the event? Probably not. So do you think, well, putting Nero back in for Kremp maybe and going back to their original team, is that the way to go? Some big questions to ask for them, because all the teams eliminated today, the next time they spawn into the server will either be never in the case of players and teams that might no longer exist, or it will be at the World Championship in 2 weeks' time. OpTic, we'll get into. Boston, the next time they spawn in is at winners round 1 of champs. So you've got to get things sorted by then, and you don't have any other time to adjust. This was the time. But wow, what a series in. Nasty with a 1.44, Vivid, I mean, Kremp at a 0.6, right, which is very rare that you see something like that, but both SMGs got cooked. It's not a new phenomenon with Boston, let's be honest here, and people said, because I believe Kremp was on PC1, that, all of a sudden, it's the left side of the stage that are getting cooked again. Now, let's be honest, right, day 1, the left side, with the exception of Toronto, lost all of the series, and people thought, oh, you know, it happens every LAN, every single LAN. There's always talk about, oh, this side of the station is bad, these PCs are duds, and I think over the first day, PC1 that Scrap was on had like a 0.75 KD, like it wasn't pretty, but of course there's other factors in play with better teams maybe on the right side because of seeding or coin flips or whatever it turns out to be. The next series though was a similar story. New York Subliners destroy Guerrillas. To be honest, I didn't even watch much of this one. I was over in like one of the booths, to be honest, kind of watching it in the background. I think it was pretty comfortable, and Guerrillas is tough for those guys. I'm sure they've been going through things behind the scenes this season that have struggled to make them successful, but they were never really competitive. Last year Major 2 was the most dream run you're ever going to see, and it was not replicated. And this organisation has been, frankly, shambolic since almost day 1 with the decisions they've made over the last several years, and they will likely disappear. This is probably the last we ever see of Los Angeles Guerrillas. They are rumoured to be getting sold elsewhere, and if this is true, then Huke holds the record all time for the most wins with the Los Angeles Guerrillas at 18 series wins, also part of their major championship victory last season. But yeah, it wasn't particularly close. Exceed was positive, Assault had a rough one, Hydra characteristic 1.33 in a situation like this. Let's though dive into the big one. This was what I was waiting for, and I think everyone was anticipating this. It's not often you get to see a rematch of the previous grand finals in the very first round of losers. That's what we had. Thieves with the tough stage. The OpTic guys were getting ready to go against Thieves, and like I said earlier today, I thought Thieves would win. My prediction coming in was that if you run this series 10 times, Thieves will win 6 out of 10 times. They'll win 60% of the series. Given the way that it currently is, OpTic playing poorly, Thieves revel in series like this. I talked to Shane earlier in the day, and he said that he for sure would have preferred to play OpTic than to play Florida, which shows you how well Florida are playing it, but also shows you what Thieves think about when they play OpTic and the levels they can reach, because you just know Kenny's dropping a great number. I don't know what his stats are, we'll look at them in a second, but certainly game 1 and game 2 Kenny turned up, and it was such a strange game to watch because it legitimately felt like I was watching a continuation of the series against Florida, right? I mean, it was the same story again. The lack of trading, the lack of confidence at times, they would just die and then the next guy would get caught off. The amount of times I saw even this specific hardpoint, we had Huke fly in, die, and then there was no real trade, and it didn't seem like the staggering was quite where it should be. You want to have the spacing correct, right? You want to have one guy goes in, the second guy follows up. That wasn't really existing for OpTic, and there were so many times where they would come off spawn, the first guy would run in and die, and the second guy, because he ran in and died a few seconds later in the last life, is then also a few seconds behind again, so the same cycle repeats. And again, there was a few chances here for OpTic to potentially capitalize. They had one good hardpoint the entire time. They couldn't hold as well to save their lives. And I think Thieves played good COD, right? I don't think they did anything spectacular necessarily, but I mean, it was honestly felt like watching men against boys, you know what I mean? Like, just in terms of the fundamentals of the gameplay. And that was actually the control. We'll come back to that in a second here, because this was the search and destroy. Again, in terms of preparation, Thieves, we saw when they played the finals against OpTic before, were very well prepped, and it was another same story here. Thieves knew what OpTic were going to do. They had some great set plays, actually, where they would capitalize on OpTic setup. They went A lot early on, and they got the bomb down, got control of the top bedroom area. OpTic went to counter that by sending 2 players there, and exploited the gap that was left in mid, and then they got through, and they made some great raps. I mean, Thieves just played great COD here in the search and destroy. I think it was more so Thieves playing well in this one than it was OpTic necessarily playing badly, but in terms of the reactions and the adjustments being made by the certain teams, Thieves were just significantly better prepared. And I thought, alright, you know what, it's 2-0 to Thieves, game 3, all they need is one good round, they can get back into things, and it felt like they were going to get it. This was the round. They won their defense, their offense, they had like a 10-5 life advantage, and they had time in this situation. At this point, there's no time on the clock, but there's only 3 lives left for Thieves. They had about a minute on the clock, a 5 life advantage. They could have sent someone on the long wrap, they could have just taken their time a little bit more. They turtled up a bit and they thought, all right, let's just go and trade some kills, and then we can, you know, go for the map with capturing the point with only a few seconds on the clock remaining, but with them having less lives. Turns out that strategy didn't work. A lot of them died. They gave up map control, and then in the end, LaRue finds himself in this situation with barely any time on the clock. There's only 3 lives here for Thieves, but Octane manages to find all 3. And this was such a dagger round because OpTic nearly won this one. Their offensive rounds in control haven't always been great, and he gets 3, and that's enough to get the job done because there just isn't the time to get on the point. So, I mean, that was remarkable. And then shortly afterwards, right, I mean, there was barely any. This is the only highlight that OpTic Texas tweeted the entire time. So, what happened to OpTic? That is the key question. Eliminated top 12, 0 map wins. I mean, they come in here as clear favourites for the entire tournament. They've beaten everyone online for the last few weeks. And yes, teams have slumps, right? This is the thing. Teams fall off. Even FaZe, they have their slumps. But whenever they're slumping, they're still placing top 4 minimum, right? OpTic did not do that today. And they just look so lost as a team the entire weekend. I know that it's been a thing with OpTic before and it's been noted. And I wonder with Karma coming in whether he might be able to help with this a little bit. But it certainly didn't seem to help in the immediate term with what I call, consider like the regain factor, right? When it's going not your way, how do you get your head back in the game and like regain? Because Dashy's always been a player that hasn't necessarily mastered that, I would say, over his career. And I don't know, especially, you know, Ghosty's young, he's new to the team. If he's their IGL, do they have someone that, since they lost the Fortress to Florida, it feels like they almost mentally collapsed because they were like, we're not playing our normal cards. We just lost our best map to Florida Mutineers. How do we get our heads back in the game? How do we play better again? The comms then fall off a little bit. They're not quite as crisp as they usually are. The confidence in the gameplay, watching Huke play when he's not confident is like, it's not pretty to watch, right? I mean, when he's confident, he's flying, he's making plays, he's making kills, but when he's not confident, he's twitchy, he's nervous about challing, he misses shots, and I don't know, that's just how I read it, at least. Maybe you guys feel differently. I think Shotzzy and Dashy were kind of still doing their thing, but Shotzzy was getting caught off so many times, like he was just running in and dying. Same thing with Huke. Like the problems with discipline we saw before re-emerged. When things are going wrong, it's quite common to fall back on the level of your preparation rather than rise to the level of your expectations, and I feel like that's kind of what happened to OpTic here. They lost full a little bit right after losing to Florida, and they simply couldn't get back in the mode they needed to be in for the weekend. We know they can play better COD than this. I don't think it's like an onliner versus LAN thing. It's just a matter of playing good COD when it matters, and it mattered. I don't know if they got a bit complacent coming into this tournament, but the way they played against Florida, they were always going to lose to Thieves, and we know that Thieves have got their number at the best of times, and they dropped the whole door Dashy as well on the timeline, and who can blame them? Because, I mean, remarkable performance from Thieves. They played well. I don't think they even did anything particularly spectacular. They just took advantage of the mistakes that OpTic were making. And if there's one time for this not to happen, ideally, it's now. It's Major 5. You're going into Champs. As I said, the next time they spawn in is round 1 of Champs. They also can't get get the first seed now after, you know, FaZe are pretty sure are going to be guaranteed first seed as a result of this. It's only the second time in nearly 100 tournaments where they've not won a map. The last time was playoffs 2019 at Miami. They did go on to get top 3 at Champs next year at that event, or next event of that year, but it's the same year again. So, I mean, back then they got 3'd by 100 Thieves to go out. This time they got 3'd by Thieves. So again, right, back to back. And I mean, look at this, on LAN since Black Ops 4, 3-13 all time. It's a kryptonite, right? It's got to be said. Is it the Kenny factor? Is it the Octane factor? I don't know. Today, it was not even a mental block or anything. It was just good COD versus bad COD, and I really think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Dashy says, don't even know anymore. Doesn't even know why they fell off, why things were poor. We'll talk about this more tomorrow, I'm sure, some of the breakdown, why people think they might have performed poorly this event. We'll say also from Ghosty, he says, the sickest he's been in a long time. So, I mean, look, when Ghosty, your kind of primary guy for the comms and everything, is not feeling well, maybe his comms aren't delivering as usually, he's not playing quite as well as he normally does, that is going to affect them a lot. Is that enough to kind of solidify their performance on the weekend? He admits, right, no excuse for the performance, but you know, he was very unwell. So yeah, that's very unfortunate for Ghosty and their team, but I still think there's more to look into from OpTic side than just one of your players being unwell in terms of what they can improve on for champs. And look at these numbers, right? Huke dropped a 0.54, might be one of the lowest KDs we've ever seen on LAN in recent memory, and his overall tournament KD was like a 0.6. I mean, it's not pretty. Octane has a 1.7 on supposedly the bad PC, right? Which is the storyline I was going to get into, is that Thieves were on the bad side of the stage, according to the storyline, and they completely transopted it again. So I think that kind of put that story to bed. Before we close out, though, Vegas versus Surge. Again, this was an embarrassment for Surge. Let's talk it how it is, right? I mean, they come into this tournament and turn out to be the last team of all the top dogs and the favourites to make champs to actually make it, if they even do still make it. Map 1 was competitive enough early on, but towards the end, TJ owns Pred. I don't know what it is. Every single gunfight he was winning. TJ had a great performance. He made Pred drop a 0.8 in this series, which you don't see every day. And the Surge's record in round 11 is something like 1 in 8. They're tragic at it. They went up 4-1, I think, in this. And then in the end, Standy's sitting in this spot, pretty common angle. He gets a kill for free, gets another one for free, and then he gets another kill to close out the round. I mean, just straight up embarrassing from Surge, the way they collapsed in this game too. And they also let them win a control. I mean, honestly, Vegas played very well. I was impressed by Vegas this series. TJ especially. We know that he's got this thing that he never loses to Pred or whatever, but that was certainly true here. And Vegas actually won an offense, can you believe it, to win the series. But Surge getting 3-0'd like this. Clay throws up the 3-0s. Who can blame him, right? Who knows if this is Clay's last ever tournament? You've got to appreciate him while he's still around, because he's 31, I hope, and he's still certainly good enough to play next season. But you never really know, right? Is Clay going to be around next year? Could this be his final tourney? You never really know, and you don't want to miss it while he's still around. 3-0ing teams. He throws up the 3-0 for the first time this year. That's the first time they've 3-0'd a team this year, and it's Surge of all teams, the team they needed to beat to make champs. So the situation now is, they won this series, impressively so. They play New York Subliners tomorrow. If they win tomorrow, they get top 6. Then they need to go one better than that to get top 4. If they get top 4, they'll have same points as Surge, and they win the tiebreakers. So that's their goal. They need to beat New York Subliners, which is going to be tough, but it's certainly doable. And they need to beat then the loser of Florida or Rokkr, which again is winnable. I mean, because they started in the hard side of winners, they actually find themselves in the easier side of losers, technically. New York is going to be a hard series, but if they win that, they're going to feel very confident they can do this. And honestly, based on this performance, this should say 3-0 to Vegas, of course. Champs is absolutely achievable, and Surge on this basis just don't deserve it at all after the decisions and the performances they've put on this year. Very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.